Coach Harsin and his staff continue to take advantage of the transfer portal, bringing in yet another one this week after bringing in a defensive back. The cycle continues, so let's talk about who's coming on over to Auburn, what their impact might be, and what it means for our football program in 2022. But before we do that, I want to welcome you back to the channel. Whether you're a member of the Auburn family or a fan of another persuasion, this is the E2C Network, where we cover the whole of the Auburn experience. We might tend to be a little sports heavy here, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our content, and thank you to members of our booster club like Corey Benson, who help produce videos like this. Coach Harsin and his staff had clear goals coming into the offseason as soon as they left spring practice and A-Day game. There were certain positions that needed to be filled via the transfer portal, and with that option now to its fullest being exploited by every university, Auburn was not going to be left behind, and they have done so more than once, much is the case with their newest transfer from Memphis, Josepth, a defensive tackle. Now, what we'll do in this video is talk a little bit about him first, and then what it means for the program. That'll look like looking at the depth chart and where he might fit in and what he brings to the table. So let's start off by talking a little bit about the athlete himself. Now, he is originally from Orange, Texas, and we'll talk a little bit about his interesting bouncing around timeline in just a second of where he's been, but originally from Orange, Texas, and went to Memphis, Tennessee. So a lot of the times when these guys transfer in, I like to look at the context of where they were to where they're going now. In the case of our channel, usually Auburn, well, sometimes away, I guess. But it would make sense if this guy, being from Texas, would go back to a Texas school. But he's choosing to come to Auburn. I find that very interesting, which tells me something about what he's expecting to do and what he chose Auburn to be his destination, why he chose them overall. If you want some measurables to talk about with this guy, it starts with 6'2" is his height, 275 pounds of defensive tackle. And for stats of his time at Memphis, we can talk about 117 tackles, 11.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble in 3 seasons there. Now, I mentioned that we're going to talk about his interesting timeline of events here. He started his college football career down at UTSA, Texas San Antonio, in 2017. He then, in 2018, went to Western Community College for 1 season, before spending his last 3 seasons at Memphis from 2019 to 2021, before ultimately choosing Auburn. Now, in between all that, there's a little bit of an interesting thing there. He had originally committed to Georgia Tech and then decided to go on a business trip, he called it, to Auburn, and was just sold, I guess. I don't know if this is the guy that the coaches just obviously identified, we gotta have you, and did the all-out recruiting pitch, or he just liked the overall fit better. But ultimately, he deflipped, committed, whatever you would call it, from Georgia Tech to Auburn, and now filling some needs that we had here. Now for what it means for Auburn with signing a defensive tackle, Josepth. We can talk about this from a couple different angles. What he personally brings to the table in terms of his experience, the depth problems that we had that he solved, and then where he fits into the overall depth chart. Let's start by addressing this. This is clearly a veteran guy that has been around. He started at UTSA, went to community college, 3 seasons at Memphis, and now is deciding to spend what I would assume is maybe his last year. It's a kind of I've got it over here to the side, I'm looking at it, a confusing timeline. So I'm assuming this is 1 more year of eligibility, maybe 2 with the whole COVID year. Who knows at this point? But he has been around and he has been relied upon by Memphis, which shows you that you're bringing somebody to the table that's got experience and is used to competing at a high level, which means he could be possibly inserted right away into Auburn's depth chart. Speaking of the depth chart, that means they have also addressed every single position that the coaching staff had identified post the spring game that they needed to fill with the transfer portal. Those were the defensive line, the defensive backs, and the wide receivers. That doesn't necessarily mean they're done, but now you can at least rest assured that they have addressed those needs that they themselves have identified. It's actually the second interior lineman that Coach Harsin and his staff have brought in, that being Jason Jones from Oregon. So 2 guys in the same transfer portal recruiting cycle to bring in. Feel pretty good with where we're at, especially with those 2 guys. Now let's talk a little bit about the depth chart and where Josepth might find himself in this equation. The understood starters right now, or at least what everybody suspects, is going to be Marcus Harris and the aforementioned Jason Jones, who just transferred in from Oregon. That's what everybody assumes, but obviously when you have a level of experience that Morris Joseph has, that could potentially, if you do the things that you need to do in practice and off the field or on the field, then you can potentially win a starting job here too. Right now, your backups are going to be Zacchaeus Walker, Marquise Burks, and then Jeffrey Imba, who is still coming back from an injury that he had before he signed with Auburn. I don't really have an update on how that's going for him, but it does start to make me think that not necessarily that the coaches are worried about him not being back and available, but maybe such a talented guy and being a centerpiece for the future, wanting to maybe ease him in and make sure we have depth so we don't have to call upon Jeffrey Imba too early and too often. But I definitely want to see him this year. What this means now, if you kind of look at the way this breaks down with the addition of Joseph, we now have a 3 deep to rely upon. And I'm not just talking about the ones that were on the team already, who are not even really talking about the walk-ons and such like that. But we actually have 3 deep guys that are ready to compete with some experience. That's a really good sign for the defensive tackle unit, the interior lineman overall. The only questions I have about this is, will he actually start? He has the tools, he has the experience, but is those positions already taken up by the guys that are already here? Can he win them? We'll have to just wait and see. The other question I have for you, is the team, is the coaches, are they already done with transfer portal now? Something tells me there's still maybe 1 or 2 more out there. I don't know. I'm just speculating because they keep surprising me. But we'll have to wait and see on that one as well. So those are my thoughts on our brand new transfer, Morris Joseph, and how he fits into the overall scheme of the program and what it means going forward. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this guy in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this type of content, please do help support it by smashing that like button. And if you want more from us, be sure to subscribe along with hitting that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads or live streams. There's ways to help support our content listed in the description, such as hitting the join button here for $1 a month to become a channel member, or head over to patreon.com/E2C Network to join the Booster Club to get yourself some extra perks for supporting us. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where we cover the whole of the Auburn experience. War Eagle.